Okay, welcome. Hi everyone. This is an online session on how to prepare for the final project evaluation, which is a mandatory requirement of the UN Trust Fund's project manager procedures. So I'm going to be telling you about that. And it'll take maybe about 1 hour, hopefully less. And then afterwards, there'll be time for questions. And this presentation really elaborates on the guidelines that you should already have received and be working on. So it hopefully won't be too different and too surprising for you. So without further ado, I'm going to start the PowerPoint presentation. But while I'm doing that, you may wish to refer to, we have sent you in the past guidelines on external evaluation. And what we've done is we've updated those guidelines, and I'm going to be sending you those guidelines after the session. And I'm also going to be referring to a wonderful handbook, which I'm going to send you a link to. It's UN Women's Handbook on how to do gender responsive evaluation. And what we've attempted to do is adapt that to improve our own guidelines to help you manage the final evaluation. Wonderful. So I'm just going to put a few more of you on mute to make sure that you're all, yes. So I will be muting you if need be. So I'm now going to share my screen, so you should be able to shortly see the presentation. And I will send you the presentation after the session. Great, okay. So as I said, this is the session on evaluation management. And most of you are coming up to the end of your project, whether it's either a 2-year or 3-year project. So you're preparing for your evaluation. So this session is going to elaborate on those requirements and what you need to do and when. Now you may want to know, well, why are we having this session now? Because you already received the guidelines. Some of you may already have started preparing for the evaluation. Well, don't worry. The set guidelines which we've improved are not far removed from the first ones. And if you've already started terms of reference and evaluation planning, we are not requesting you to change anything. We're hoping that this session and the guidelines will help you improve and enhance the evaluation process. We're not expecting you to change anything if you've already started. If you haven't started preparing for the evaluation, then this is an excellent time to do this session. So I will cover why evaluation is important, what the mandatory requirements are, what the questions are that you need to get the evaluation to answer, and so on. And critically, I'll tell you what the roles and responsibilities are compared to yourselves and the UN Trust Fund. So as I said, why are we having this now when some of you may have already started your evaluation? Well, the reason is because we did a lessons learned review of our evaluation process that was done last year, and we looked at the quality of the evaluations being produced by the organizations we fund. And we found that there were some flaws in the evaluation process or some misunderstandings, and that additional guidance would be helpful. And critically, what we noticed was that sometimes the evaluators didn't realize the importance of making the evaluation gender responsive. And as we're all involved in projects relating to gender equality, that is a critical aspect. In addition, we really wanted to make it more flexible. We realized perhaps some of the questions we were suggesting you ask were a bit too specific. We want to give you a bit more flexibility to make sure the evaluation is useful to you. And what we've really found is that the most important stage is, of course, the terms of reference and the inception. If you don't get the focus of the evaluation right from the start, then there will be a major problem and the draft report won't be useful. So we want to emphasize the importance of preparing well for the evaluation. So what is evaluation? And I'm sure that most of you know this because you're all, many of you are M&E professionals even. But as a reminder, evaluation is an assessment that usually comes at the end of a project intervention to see whether it's achieved the expected results. And the aim of an evaluation is to ensure that it's useful to programming and that you get evidence to really improve your project moving forward. So if the evaluation is not useful to you, then there's no point doing it. So I really want to highlight that evaluation should be useful to you as the evaluation manager and as the organization. Sure, it's useful for the trust fund, but primarily it's for you to improve your project moving ahead and to make the case for additional resources, for example. So as I said, evaluation is critically important to inform your organization and your project moving forward, even if the funding from the UN Trust Fund has ended. And it's vital for accountability, and that's why we ask for an external evaluation. So we, the UN Trust Fund, can see what has been achieved with the funds. Now, I mentioned earlier the importance of having a gender-responsive evaluation. But what does that mean? Well, it's a wonderful opportunity at this time, at the end of your project, to have an external perspective on whether or not your project has actually had any impact on changing gender dynamics and specifically violence against women. And often, unfortunately, if you hire an evaluator that does not have gender experience, they may not get this. They may not assess this. So it's very important to hire someone who understands the importance of gender-responsive evaluation. It's a wonderful opportunity to really look into whether your project not only had an impact on your results in terms of violence against women, but also many of your projects have a wider impact on changing gender dynamics and improving relationships. So the evaluation should look at that. Okay, so back to the boring bit. I'm afraid, yes, it is a mandatory requirement for large grants, all those attending this presentation. We do ask that you submit the final report at least 2 months after the project ends. So if your project is ending in end of December, then we would expect the report by end of February, 2 months after the project ends. This gives the evaluator, if you start now, plenty of time, 6 months to prepare. We do want to see satisfactory evaluations. Therefore, we don't give the final installment of your grant award until we receive that evaluation. And critically, as it says in your agreement, the evaluation should be satisfactory quality. And that is why we're doing this presentation, to help you understand what satisfactory means and to let you know what we want to see and when to help you achieve a satisfactory evaluation. So what does this mean, excuse me, in practice? In practice, to help you make sure that you achieve a satisfactory evaluation, as in quality, and I just want to highlight this, apologies. When we talk about a satisfactory evaluation, we're not talking about it saying that the project is a success. Projects can fail, and they can still be useful learning opportunities. Sometimes things happen which means you can't achieve your results. That's not what we mean by satisfactory evaluation. By satisfactory evaluation, we mean the quality of the report, the quality of the analysis, the way it is written. It could say that your project failed, but it could say that in a very analytical and useful way. All learning is important. So when I mention satisfactory quality, I'm talking about the way the evaluation is conducted, not the content. So to help achieve that satisfactory quality, we ask to see, and that's me specifically, the monitoring and evaluation person in the UN Trust Fund, the terms of reference, the inception report, the draft evaluation report, and the final report. And I will go through each of these. But if you get the terms of reference right and the inception report right, you're very likely to have a good and satisfactory final report. So what do we mean by quality standards and satisfactory evaluations? As I said, it's not about the contents of the report. If they find that there are problems with your project, that's fine, that's life. But in order to do a good quality evaluation, you have to make sure that the process has these elements. And I won't go through all of these. These are in your guidance. But critically, it means that the evaluation methodology which the consultant you hire designs should be robust. So critically, you need to hire the best person for the job in your context. And critically, evaluations need to be conducted safely. As we mentioned throughout project implementation, we take ethics and safety extremely seriously. So if you get the terms of reference for your consultant right, and if you hire the right consultant and they know how to design an evaluation, then you're much further step forward in achieving a satisfactory report. So the guidance will go into these in each step, and I'm going to go into this in a little bit more depth now. Just putting people on mute. So what about quality at the end of the report? Well, when you finally get the report, the focus is on the way that the data is presented, the way that it's analyzed, and the contents of the report in terms of it being a sound methodology that adequately addresses your evaluation questions, and that it really is something that you can take away to donors, or you could take away to partners and critically your beneficiaries. And if they read that report, they would say, yes, we believe that that report is credible. So when I'm reading an evaluation I want to feel confident that enough effort has been put in, there's been sound analysis. If you imagine it's like reading a news article and you come away thinking, I really don't believe that because I only heard one person's opinion. It's not an opinion piece. What we need is many people's opinions, and for the evaluator to compare and contrast and present an unbiased and independent assessment. So the draft and final report, we need to have confidence that it was done in a sound and robust way. So to repeat, when we're talking about quality, it's about the way in which the evaluation is designed and the quality of the methodology. And in the final report, it's about the nature in which the information is presented and that it comes across as objective and evidence-based. When we talk about evaluation of UN Trust Fund projects, it's just a reminder that we ask you to hire someone to evaluate the entire project. So if your project was 2 years or 3 years, we ask you to evaluate the results of the project from the start to the end date. We ask you to evaluate the project against key criteria which are standard best practice in evaluations, and I'll go through each of these. Critically, we want the evaluations to draw out lessons or promising practices on ending violence against women. But you own the evaluation, so your organization can add objectives. If you decide that you want the evaluator to explore, in addition to these two, something, for example, about the way in which your organization is designed or managed, you can add that. So as long as you have these two objectives, you can add further objectives to the evaluation. As I mentioned, the evaluation needs to focus on the whole project. And in particular, it should assess whether the project has achieved and to what extent the project results. And as a reminder, for us, the project results are defined as the outputs, outcomes, and the goal. We have found in the past that the consultants hired don't understand our terminology. So you must share the guidance with them. We are happy to brief the consultants. The consultants need to understand what we mean by outputs, outcomes, and project goal. And in particular, we want to focus on whether or not the projects have any effect on changes in the lives of women and girls. If this isn't possible, then the evaluator can explain why. For example, some of you may not work directly with women and girls, but we want to at least try and aim to involve women and girls and the key beneficiaries and to assess the impact of the evaluation on their lives. So when we're talking about evaluating the entire project, we're specifically talking about looking at the key results of the project up to goal level and the change in the lives of women and girls. Evaluations should answer key questions, and in the original guidelines we had quite a lot of questions that were quite descriptive in the terms of reference. So what we've done is we've narrowed these down to 6 and a cross-cutting question, and you can add to these if you wish, as I said, things that you need as you're an organization, but we do ask that you include these 6 key questions. These 6 key questions cover the key evaluation criteria which are used as standard across evaluation in the development community. I won't go through each of these, they're in the guidance, but broadly you really need to look at effectiveness, relevance, efficiency, sustainability, impact, knowledge generation, and as a new cross-cutting issue, in all of these, consider what impact the project has had on gender, equality, and human rights. By this being a cross-cutting criteria, we have some guidance, but basically I mean things like making sure that data is disaggregated, making sure that the evaluator does look at changes in the lives of women and girls. Even when it comes to efficiency, the evaluator can look at whether resources were efficiently distributed between, for example, men and women in the project. So that's a cross-cutting issue. So apart from these 6 key questions we'd like the evaluations to answer, you can add other questions. And if you want advice on that, we're here to help. And I will send you some resources on how to help design evaluation questions. So to recap on the mandatory requirements, just to recap. So as I said, you must have an external evaluation and you must submit it 2 months after the project. It must be satisfactory quality. By satisfactory quality, we're looking at the quality of the analysis, the objectiveness of the recommendations, and the only way we can be sure that the evaluation is robust is on the basis of its methodology and that the evaluator really knew what they were doing. The purpose of the evaluation at minimum must be to evaluate the project on those 6 key criteria and to identify best practices. But beyond that, you can add additional criteria and additional questions. So who does what? Well, you are the owners of the evaluation, and I know it might seem that we say it's mandatory, so the UN Trust Fund is taking control and is in charge, and we hope that it doesn't come across that way. The only reason that we're saying that it's mandatory is because we found that it's best practice in project management. It also means that we and you have ammunition to raise more money. With these evaluations, we can really prove that investing in ending violence against women projects is important and that we're learning and improving. So that's why we make it mandatory. But it must be useful to you, your organization and your staff, and your beneficiaries and your stakeholders. You must have a say. So that is why the whole evaluation process should be managed by you, the grantee organization. And so me, the portfolio manager, whoever, we won't be involved in recruitment, we won't be involved in designing the evaluation, but we do provide advice. What we recommend is that you nominate someone in your office to be the evaluation task manager. They don't necessarily need evaluation experience if they follow our guidelines, but ideally, yes, it could be someone involved in monitoring and evaluation. Ideally, it's not the project manager. This is just because to keep that external perspective. If the project manager of the UN Trust Fund project leads the evaluation, there is a slight danger of bias, but we know that some of you are small organizations, so if that's not possible, we understand. But that's why it's important to involve your executive director or the head of your organization and to make sure others in the organization do take an active role, so it's not just your responsibility. So allocate someone to manage the process. And that person, and that could be you who I'm talking to right now, really leads the whole process of designing the terms of reference, recruiting the consultant, gathering information, and so forth. And here I've highlighted in yellow that at the same time as you're preparing for the evaluation, your organization should be preparing for the final end-line report. I hate to say this and admit this, but often your final reports can sometimes be better than the evaluation in terms of the quality of the data. So you can also work with the evaluator. If you hire the evaluator now, you can discuss the division of responsibility. So if the evaluator is going to do interviews with beneficiaries, you may not want to repeat that for your final report. You might want to leave that to the evaluator. So with the evaluation task manager should talk to the project manager and make sure that the final reporting is aligned and that data collection is aligned. As a reminder, though, how does the external evaluation differ from your final report? Well, if you remember way back when we planned your project and we were helping with results frameworks, the baseline and end line is internal data collection. It's things which you should do as an organization as a routine part of project monitoring. The external evaluation is objective and you hire someone external. But they could repeat the same information. So the evaluator, that's exactly the point. The external evaluator should come in and verify and validate what you've been finding. So they can use your end-line data and then they can also verify it by doing their own data collection. So I hope that's clear. Going back to roles and responsibilities, we've changed it a little this year, whereby I now have an assistant, Danielle, who's not here right now, but there's now 2 of us in the small monitoring and evaluation team. So we want to do more to help you in terms of reviewing terms of references and helping you with the process. So you will liaise mainly with me on the process of evaluation. The people that you work with day to day, such as Anna, Lorna, Fiona, or Mildred, they should really be outside of the process, the day-to-day process, because they're actually stakeholders who have knowledge of the project. They will have an opinion for the evaluator on how the project was managed. Likewise, UN Women. So you will consult and involve them as stakeholders, but they won't be involved so much in the quality assurance. And on the point of stakeholders, we do recommend, as it's best practice, that you form some kind of reference group or stakeholder group. You shouldn't be doing this alone as a task manager. It might be helpful to have a key group of 6 even people involving the portfolio manager here, your main partner, your main focal point for beneficiaries, and that group can help you design the evaluation and help you make sure the whole process is useful. That's just a recommendation. We're not saying you have to do it. So now we've determined the roles and responsibilities that you, the task manager, will be leading on the process. What is the process? Well, the evaluation process actually starts way back from day 1 of the project, but we may have forgotten that far back. It's a long time ago. So what step we're at now is really preparing for the evaluation at step 2. But I'm going to go through each of these steps of the evaluation process. As I said, really, we should plan for the evaluation from day 1. That's why we recommended a certain budget for your evaluation. Evaluation can be expensive. Now, if you have a small budget for evaluation, we can talk and discuss what is feasible. And the evaluators should come when you hire someone with a proposal that is cost effective. But we do know that evaluation can be expensive. That's why we've suggested at least 20,000 for new projects. I'm not going to go into much about this because you're already at the end of your project, but just a reminder that ideally you would be planning and knowing what kind of evaluation you want to design way back at the beginning of the project. And I've put here a resource called Better Evaluation, and I'm just going to share it. Just for future reference, there is a wonderful website called, but I can't show you. Oh, yeah. There's a wonderful website that I'm trying to show you. That's called Better Evaluation, which really goes into what kind of evaluation designs there are, so that you know how much to budget, so you can work that out from day 1. So in this evaluation website, which is available in different languages, you can select the language at the top. You'll see what are approaches, what are evaluation approaches. And here it lists all the different ways you can approach evaluation, right to the most sophisticated, such as a randomized control trial, which, for those who don't know, is when you can compare one community with another community. So if your project was being implemented in one region but not another, if you have the money and the time, you can compare what difference your project is making between different communities. But that is expensive, so you have to plan that from day one. So we can't talk about that now because you're already at the end of your project, but I want to flag that for future projects. So right now you're preparing for your evaluation. So hopefully you have a task manager, or you're the lucky one who's responsible. And the next thing is to have a look at your project to see whether it can be evaluated and what you can do if it can't. Think about stakeholders, draft the terms of reference, and select the team. So that's what stage you should be at now. As I mentioned, we would like to see the terms of reference at least 3 months before the end of your project. So I think many of you are due to submit your terms of reference to the trust fund in September. So ideally, you would have already done a few of these steps, but if not, it's not too late. When drafting, I'm just going to mention about evaluability assessment. There's guidance in your pack, but by this, I simply mean that look at your project, look at your original theory of change, look at your proposal and your results frameworks and the data you've collected. And as a team, as an organization, consider, do you have enough information to produce a useful evaluation? And if not, is there anything you can do now to help? That's why I mentioned the end-line report and how useful it is. It's also not too late if you decide to document a change to your theory or a change to your project. Do that now, because you can then tell the evaluator. The evaluator needs to understand if there's been any major changes. Maybe you had to drop a whole output. Maybe you had to stop working with a partner. If that's not documented, then your evaluator will have to assess your project on the original proposal. So make sure you have sufficient information. And as for stakeholder participation, as I mentioned, it's good to start thinking about setting up a group and to make a list and analyze, well, who needs to be involved in this evaluation and how to make it participatory as possible, involving, for example, key beneficiary groups or representatives from those groups. All of that will help you draft the terms of reference. So when hiring a consultant to do the evaluation, you need to advertise. And in that advertisement, you need to set out clearly what the evaluator is expected to do. And that's what the terms of reference can help. We have a complete template for you in our guidance that you can use. And many of you are using it already. It's the same as the one that you have. It's just that I've updated the questions. As I said, you can make them more flexible and adapt them if you wish. For those who've already drafted your terms of reference, and maybe you've even hired the evaluator, it's not too late to say to the evaluator, well, we've been given a bit more flexibility. Sometimes evaluators think that our guidance is a bit too prescriptive. So we're open to you adapting some of the areas in the original terms of reference to make it useful. But at minimum, these 12 aspects should be in the terms of reference. When you advertise, you do not have to advertise the full terms of reference. You can do a very short version. Obviously, when you're advertising in a local newspaper or website, you can't put this horrific 10-page document. So you can do a short version, and then you can tell the applicants to contact you for the full version. So once you've advertised, what are you looking for? What kind of evaluator are you looking for? Well, as a reminder, they must be external. They must not be anyone who's been involved in your project activities. They can be people who've helped with baseline and data collection, but you must not hire someone who's been helping with project activities or designed, for example, one of your outputs or activities. Ideally, you should hire national consultants because we have a commitment in the UN to support national capacity. If you have any problems with that, you can come and speak to us. Often it's a good idea to have an evaluation team, 2 people. That could be someone international based and someone local based if you have enough money. As per usual, you must do the procurement process in an open and transparent way, following our guidelines, which basically obviously means you can't hire your friends to do the evaluation. You should compare quotes, get 3 proposals, look at the cost effectiveness. You certainly don't have to hire the cheapest person. It really depends on how much money you have, but ideally you would hire the most qualified. We actually in UN Women have a database of consultants with experience in gender evaluation. You can search that database by country, theme, language, experience. We can also reach out to UN Women country offices for you and look and ask for recommendations of people who could apply for the job. So make sure it's a transparent process. When you're looking at the specific skills of the evaluator, we've put some very specific competencies in the template that you have, but they must be experienced evaluators. We have had problems in the past where people have hired researchers and academics. There's actually sometimes quite a difference, and I've put on this list the importance of not necessarily hiring someone who's an opinion, someone who's an academic who has a lot of opinions on the subject won't necessarily have evaluation skills. Importantly, you should look at whether they can work with the local population, and ideally you would have a female evaluator or enumerator or interviewer speaking to female beneficiaries. So that's where maybe a team is better. And of course, often evaluators do work with local people to help with interviews, which is fine. Always verify references for the people that you hire, and you can always ask to see a sample of their writing. That's highly useful to see if their writing skills are up to par. So now we've talked about preparation. The basic thing is you have to draft the terms of reference and recruit a good evaluator or team. After that, you're then managing them to deliver. So your role as evaluation task manager is to make sure that consultant delivers. And we all know how challenging that is. All sorts of things can happen. The consultant can get sick and be unavailable to work. The consultant could maybe have overemphasized their skills and you find out they don't have the skills required. You may find them difficult to work with. If you have any problems, come and ask. The key thing, only recommendation I can make is don't pay them up front. Make sure you pay consultants in installments. So pay them on delivery of the inception report, depending on the quality. If you find then at the first stage they're not suitable, you always have a chance to recruit someone else. Also, given that we don't give you the final 10% of the grant until a satisfactory report is delivered, you really do not want to be paying upfront. Always keep aside some money until you receive a satisfactory report. Throughout the process, good communication with the evaluator is key. You might want to try, I know you have a lot to do, we all do, you may want to trust them just to be getting on with it, but do check in with them, and a good conversation can help you understand if they're managing the process well. You should also check in with the stakeholders that the evaluator is talking to make sure that the interviews, for example, are going well. This evaluator is really representing your organization somewhat, so you need them to be professional. So you've hired your evaluator, now they're into the inception stage. We at the Trust Fund want to see that inception report because it really critically shows if the consultant understands the task. They need to understand your project and what the requirements of the evaluation are. We have seen problems in the past where the evaluator really has not understood the project, doesn't understand the terminology, and if you leave that, it will really lead to a useless evaluation. So the inception report, they draft it. So the evaluator will write it, and that means they're reflecting back what they understand about the project. They will look at some of your information, do some minor consultation, and they will tell you who, what, where, when, and how they will do the evaluation. We expect to see that really within a month of you recruiting the consultant. And then after the inception report, they'll get on to the analysis and the data collection. I'm not going to go into the data collection or analysis because that's the role of the evaluator. And if you get the right consultant and if you have a good quality inception report, you can be reassured that you're likely to get a good draft report. You, as the evaluation manager, do not need to understand everything about evaluation methodologies. There's a lot of terminology, and again, I'm going to refer back to the website I mentioned. This resource, there's a lot of terminology, such as here, sample. The evaluator has to determine the sample. You know, you might be wondering, I don't even know what that means. What is a sample? So if you really are interested, you can go and look on this website. You can learn about this. But that's why we're here for you. I'm here for you to review the inception report. There's certain things the evaluator has to know because they're a professional, and we can help verify that you have hired a professional. So they get on with it. They do the data collection. They do the analysis. You've been checking in with them, and so they deliver the draft report. Usually you get the draft report a few weeks before the 2 months is up. As we say, we need the report 2 months before the end of the project, after the end of the project. Make sure they do give you at least 2 weeks, maybe even a month to comment, because it can take time. But at this point, it's too late to really impact on the design of the methodology. But it's not too late to suggest the evaluator does more interviews, looks at more reports. So you'll want to check the report has all the information. You should not influence the opinion of the evaluator. If the methodology is sound and the evaluator says, I'm very, very sorry, but this project failed, there's nothing you can do. That's still an important learning opportunity. Do not be afraid of negative or learning in the report. We never want to hide any information like that because it is still useful. So you just need to fact check the report and make sure it meets the requirements. Again, we're here for you. We will look at the evaluation. Likewise, we will comment if we think the report is too biased. I have seen evaluations where I think that they've been too judgmental. So the report has to be unbiased and factual. Once all the comments have come in, the evaluators should take them on board, and then they produce the final report. At this stage, you can only really check for key things that might need to be removed. We do ask that, obviously, you must get consent for any names in the report. If not, we remove all names. Anyone who's been consulted has to give their consent, or we remove, and even at that point, they may not want their name published. And we do a final check. And then what's exciting, I hope, is that we do publish evaluation reports if we receive your permission on our website. And we can really use that to highlight to other donors. We want to show other donors and other partners, look at this great project, or look at the learning. So if it's a good quality of evaluation, we can disseminate it, we can use it. So on that final note, please use the evaluation. It's not just to put on file. Consider, we can't insist, but we do recommend having a follow-up action plan for your organization and really using the report with partners and as resource mobilization tools. Finally, you'll be glad to know this is the last slide. The guidance has so many annexes. So we have a template for the terms of reference. We have a template for the inception report. We have a template for the final draft report. We have guidance on templates for how to do the analysis. All of that is for you and also the evaluators. So once you hire the evaluators, share the full guidance with them. I'm very happy to do further briefings, or they can watch this video. There are some great resources, including the UN Women's Handbook and the website that I mentioned. And finally, as this is new, well, improved guidance, I would love your feedback. So after this session, I will be emailing you with the guidance. And once you read it, tell me, is it good? Is it useful? Is there something you don't understand? And we're here to discuss how we can make the evaluations as useful as possible for your organization. So that's it. I hope that that has been useful. To recap, I hope that I have covered sufficiently what we've done in terms of changing the guidance, but you will receive a copy so you know why it's important, what our evaluation requirements are, what the quality standards are, what your roles and responsibilities are, and some suggestions for the steps that you take. So that's it. Now I would like to turn to any questions. Wow, there's so many of you online. That's wonderful. And many of you are probably evaluation experts already, and many of you have probably managed evaluations. So I welcome any other recommendations from all of you. We should use this community to help each other. So that's it. Yes. So any questions? What I will ask you to do is you can take, I can see if, I think I put you all on mute. If you want to ask a question, put it in the chat box. And then I can take you off mute. So maybe just either raise your hand, well, say your name in the chat box, and then you can ask a question. And I will also invite if Anna or Mildred or anyone in the trust fund wants to add any suggestions from their vantage point, please add. I hope you're all as excited as me about evaluation. Okay, Shan, okay, and I'm going to take you off mute. Shan Shafiq, you can go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Gemma.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. Nice to hear you.
Could you tell us what country, where you are, what organization?
Yeah, before I start to ask my question, I'm Shan. I work for Asuda. We are based in Iraq, Kurdistan. And currently we are working with UN Trust Fund on how to improve the mechanisms of SGBV and GBV in the Iraqi Kurdistan on Syrian refugee women and girls. So we are almost at the end of the project. And my question for Gamma is, we were talking about the task managers. And what is the specific role of the project manager? I'm talking about as a project manager. So what would my role be in the whole evaluation process?
Great question. Okay, so the project, if you are able and lucky enough to separate and have an evaluation task manager, the project manager is therefore a stakeholder in the process. You're the key stakeholder. You want to know whether how you manage the project was successful. So as a stakeholder, you offer your opinion, and also, though, you offer all the information. You are the critical person to provide the project proposal, the data that you've collected. You also should provide advice on which other stakeholders should be consulted. So you're the primary stakeholder, but you really are, you should remain ideally outside of the process so that it can be unbiased and objective. So you will work hand in hand with the evaluation task manager, but as a channel of information and of a source of facts and information. I hope that's clear. But you don't have to manage the process. You don't have to recruit the consultant.
Four, five, what is it? What is the requirement? Like, you have a task manager team. What is the requirement of a team settlement? So how many task managers? How many in the team?
That really depends on the size of your organization. And I know so we're talking about an ideal situation. For some of you, it might be harder. If you have a small project, then you might only need one task manager who can lead the whole process. If it's a very large project with a lot of information to collect, the evaluation task manager might need an assistant who can help collect different project information and do a lot more of the logistics. So if you imagine, the evaluation task manager has to both collect all the information to help the evaluator, as in the documentation, not the data analysis. And also they have to organize travel, they have to, that you might have to have someone else. So that's why a team approach is good. You don't have to create new roles. It just means get together in your organization and decide, okay, the M&E person will lead on the process, but the HR assistant will lead on the travel and logistics. The project manager will lead on collecting the key documentation and providing a list of stakeholders. And of course, the head of the organization will encourage the whole organization to take this seriously. I'm afraid I can't define exactly how that team would look because it would look differently for every organization. Okay, thank you, Shan. And we're going to see each other soon, so we can ask questions, because I'll be seeing you in Jordan soon, so we can definitely talk again. I shall move on to Godfrey. Let me find Godfrey. Godfrey, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, and do you hear me?
Please, yes. Please tell us what country you're from and what your organization is.
Okay. Working for Hamref West Africa in Tanzania, and we are basically funded by UN Women, whereby we're working on the project that's basically on supporting young girls and women and the issues that are related to female genital mutilation here in Serengeti. So it's basically a project that is covering only one district, Serengeti district in Tanzania.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One, I wanted more clarifications from you, Gemma, basically on how do we involve the universities or the academics as far as this in-term evaluation is concerned. And secondly, I wanted only to explain how we work as far as these evaluations are concerned in our organization as far as AMREF is concerned. The role of developing the TOR in terms of reference is basically the responsibility of our project manager here in Tanzania. For AMREF, is a responsibility, and once is done, it's basically sharing to our program M&E manager, who is basically could be a task manager, who reviews the whole document, and thereafter the program M&E manager with the task manager will share this one with the procurement, who are responsible for ensuring it gets advertised and ensure that all the processes that are concerned with the recruitment are carried out. And at this point, a project manager is merely a stakeholder in this process. And thereafter, once the process is done, it is handed over to the tender committee. But the project manager also is also not involved in this one. It's just merely we are things like a stakeholder. And thereafter, tender committee is done with the recruitment and the signing of the contract and whatever. It goes back again to the task manager with the NME manager to ensure that makes the follow-up of the consultant who has been hired. And at this point, the task manager with the M&E manager works hand in hand with the project manager to ensure that the consultant gets support when it goes down there to the field to meet the different beneficiaries. So will this work in your side?
Hi, thank you, Godfrey. Yes, that sounds very thorough process and very useful for others to hear that. And you raised an important point. You mentioned that the project manager drafted the terms of reference and then gave it to the evaluation manager. That's a good point, yes, and it goes back to Sean's point. Often it's the project manager who knows the project, obviously. So you can definitely, the project manager can help at that initial stage of defining the evaluation, because they must provide a description of the project, they must provide a description of the theory of change, that project manager who knows that. But then once the evaluation task manager, M&E staff come in, they can take it off you as the project manager and provide that objective view, and they can have a look at it and say, okay, this is the useful information, but we might need more information, and then they can take it forward from the evaluation specialist side. So Godfrey, yes, it sounds, just to put in context for others, it's a very large project, yours in the Serengeti, that's almost $1 million. So you do hopefully have a larger number of staff who can form that kind of team. So that sounds very good, very useful. On your question on the universities, how and when? Well, ideally, it depends on how you want to involve local universities and academics. At this stage, because it's at the end of your projects, I would leave that to the evaluator to decide. They're the specialists, the person that you hire, but you can mention it if you already have a good relationship with a local university. Or potentially if you were using university students to help you collect data or to be involved, then you have a fantastic point of support, and you can put that in the terms of reference, or you can mention it to the evaluator, and then perhaps they can take that forward with the university. If the evaluator is doing quite a large evaluation that will require many interviews or a lot of data collection, they could use university students to help them with data collection. If you don't have a relationship with the university yet, it's always worth reaching out to them, but just manage your expectations, because there's always also the fear that they may ask for remuneration, and they're not necessarily skilled. So they may not have the data analysis and collection skills. But there's always an opportunity there that if you hire an evaluation team, that they will train students, for example, to help them with data collection. So at this late stage, I would recommend that if you don't have a relationship with the university, don't perhaps try. But if you do, then put them in touch with the evaluator once you hire them. I hope that's helpful, Godfrey. Okay. I'm going to move to Sujuti. You have written your question, but it's also lovely to hear your voice. Sujuti, do you want to ask your question?
Hi, Gemma. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well. Thank you.
Okay. So I have a couple of queries. One is you mentioned how many.
Oh, can you say what country you're from and about your organization?
Yeah, sure. I'm from Pragya. We work in 5 states of India, and so we are implementing a 3-year project with UNCF support.
Wonderful.
And I had a couple of queries. One is you had mentioned you can use like we can withdraw some bit of payment and withhold it so that we can control the quality of the report or by the external evaluator. But we have to make all the payments by the end of the project. So do you have any recommended timelines on how this can be managed? Because the final report is due only after like 2 months till the end of the project. After the project.
That's an excellent point. And if Mildred, if you want to add anything, I didn't think of that. I mean, certainly I would aim, at the very least, the inception report should be delivered before the end of the project. So at minimum, you can definitely do it in 2 installments that the inception report is delivered way before the project ends, so that you can check the quality before you go ahead. But I just wanted to see, Mildred, I've taken you off mute, if you can add anything.
Yes, I'm here. Can you repeat the question? Yes.
So it was about withholding payment. So I had suggested, that they pay in installments, but of course, if they wait until 2 months after the project ends to make the final payment, that's difficult for them to account for it.
I'm not sure if I understand correctly, but if I understand correctly, is that they can make the first payment for the inception report. Is that what you mean?
Yes, but what if they withhold some payment for the final report, and then they can still provide invoices right at the end of the project, right?
Yes, they can still provide. So this is actually what we expect is once the final evaluation is approved, they have to submit all the supporting documents so we can reconcile with the final financial report.
Okay, so it will be possible for them to withhold the final payment for the final report until delivery.
That's correct. That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Does that help, Sujuti?
Yeah.
Wonderful. And do you have any other questions?
Yeah. What kind of support would the M&E team be providing during the TOR process or the recruitment process? And if you can explain a little bit more about the cross-cutting area of evaluation that you had shown in one of the slides.
Thank you, Sujuti. So what will we provide? Well, for myself and Danielle, my assistant, we will check the terms of reference against our quality standards, and we promise to at least send usually 2 rounds of comments. So we will look at the terms of reference, and we will provide you as the evaluation task manager with advice on if we think there's anything missing. And then you can redraft the terms of reference, send it back to us, and we will say, yes, that looks good. So we provide advice on meeting the standards. The same with the inception report. We promise to send at least 1 set of comments and then check it again. In terms of recruitment of consultants, we won't get involved. We won't help you review CVs. We can't get involved in that procurement process. But what we can do is, if you're struggling to find someone, is we can use our network. So if you find that you advertise and no one applies, we can help disseminate the advertisement. We can get in touch with our UN colleagues in your country and see if we can find someone who might be suitable to apply. So our main role is just to check that the products are meeting the quality standards, but we won't have time to get in-depth involved in like the design of methodologies. I hope that's clear.
Okay, yeah. Thanks, Gemma.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Now let's see. Anna, I'll come back to you. Anna's just saying great and welcomes everyone from the Africa region. Mariana, just find you, and Marina. I've taken you off mute. If you could introduce yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great. Hello, everyone. I'm Marina. I come from the Autonomous Women's Center from Serbia, Belgrade, and I'm the project coordinator for a prevention project. So we work with secondary school boys and girls, and also secondary school teachers and school staff within a UN Trust Fund supported project. I have several, because it's a relatively small organization. I will be leading the evaluation processes as well in the organization. And I have several questions. First of all, about the evaluation methodology. What I would like to know is how detailed it should be in the terms of reference.
Thank you for your question. That's a good question, and how detailed you get really depends on your expertise in evaluation, and how much you were able to look at the design of evaluation when you plan the project. For many of you, you may have only been able to do the rudimentary data collection. So you don't have to say much in the evaluation methodology section of the terms of reference. You can simply say that you expect those who apply to propose a methodology. So you can put in the advertisement, please reply to the advertisement setting out your proposed methodology. They could send you like a one-pager. But what you will need to put in the terms of reference is some detail on what data is available. So you can say we have baseline data that's both quantitative and qualitative. You could give some sort of idea of the sample. You could say that we have some qualitative information from interviews. We have some quantitative data from service statistics, for example, to give them an idea of what's available. And then they can design the methodology themselves. If, on the other hand, you're quite advanced and you know, for example, that you have 6 communities that the evaluator must go to, or 6 schools, or you can put that in much more depth in the methodology section. Say, we expect the evaluator to speak to X number of teachers in so many schools, and therefore we need a proposal that sets out how you would do that. It really depends on your scale of the data you have, your knowledge of evaluation. But don't be afraid to just say in the advertisement, you tell me what the methodology should be. And the inception phase will help refine that. They're the experts. They should propose the methodology. I hope that helps, Marina. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong.
Great, thank you. I also have a couple of more questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
As far as the evaluation team is concerned, who handles their logistics? If they need to make field visits, is this their responsibility? And can we say in the terms of reference that they organize their own travel? set up their own interviews, or is there a recommendation on who should be dealing with this?
Good question. Yes, you could separate it into sort of logistics and travel to get them to the country, for example. Yes, if you don't have much time, you could say you must be responsible for your own international or international travel to the capital city or whatever. You're responsible for your own accommodation, and that they must include an amount for this in their proposal, and that they're responsible for that. And, maybe they'd have an assistant. When it comes to visiting, for example, the local populations and beneficiaries, it's recommended that you or project partners facilitate that. Unless you have extreme confidence in the evaluator and the evaluator already knows the local community, they will probably need introductions and they will probably need facilitation. So you could divide it in that way to say those kind of travel and logistics, it's easy for them to do themselves, let them do it themselves. But you'll also have to be aware that you have less control over costs, because you'll just have to verify that, obviously if they buy a flight ticket, you'll want to see the receipt. But when it comes to meeting the local community, for example, you might want more control. I hope that helps.
Okay, and I have one more question about the size and participants of the reference group. Although you've already mentioned, you said 6 would be an ideal number, if I understood you correctly. And I also wanted to check about the advisory group, because in the guidelines you say it must include a focal point from the UN Women Regional Office, the UN Trust Fund portfolio manager, and I would like to ask who else you recommend we should include in the advisory group.
Great, thank you. Yes, and as always, it really depends on the project, because even for some of you, you might not have ever spoken to your UN Women colleagues before, so you don't have to involve them. So I'll make that clear in the guidance. The stakeholder group, the advisory group who can help with the evaluation just has to be your key partners. So don't involve the UN Women Office necessarily if they haven't been involved in your project. You would want to include the UN Trust Fund Portfolio Manager. If you're working with the government, a government partner, and you have a good relationship with them, you could involve them. Obviously, implementing partners. Obviously, perhaps a representative from a beneficiary group, a women's group. But so that advisory group who help with advising on the terms of reference, for example, and inception report, they have to be people who have the time and the energy and the interest. The wider stakeholder group, who then the evaluator will collect data from, can be much broader. And they will help define the numbers, whether it's 50 people or 100 or whatever. But your core key advisory group just needs to be the people that you work with on a regular basis, who have an active interest in the project.
Okay, great. That helps. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. So, I think Sujuti was asking the same question about UN Women as advisory group. So I'm going to be sending you the new guidelines. So you mentioned table 10 on page 17. So I've revised the guidelines to make it much clearer. So after this, you will receive the guidelines. Okay, so, I think we've already covered that, Sujuti, about my role as M&E. So the basic difference is that I will advise on the quality and help you with the process. The portfolio manager should be involved as an advisor and stakeholder in the contents. Let's see, who else? Kristen. Okay, Kristen, I'm going to find you and take you off mute. Hi, Kristen. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, Gemma. Kristen here from Kenya, working with the International Institute of Rural Reconstruction.
Wonderful.
One of the questions has already been asked, but the other one is related to the data collection tools. Whether you will require to have a look at the data collection tools and approve them just like the TOR and the inception report. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, the data collection tools should actually be an annex. So all the templates specify what we recommend as part of each stage. At the inception stage, a key annex that the evaluator consultant should give you as the task manager is an idea of the data collection tools. The draft report should also include the data collection tools as an annex. Therefore, if you receive them, then yes, please send them to me. They're a critical part of reviewing the quality. What's a data collection tool? For example, an interview guide or questionnaire, a survey that they might want to ask people, a criteria for assessing legal documents, just the sort of tools you've been using yourself. What we do need to see some of them, yes. They may not be ready at inception phase, but ideally some of them would be, or at least an idea that yes, we're going to do interviews and the interview questions will follow. So anything you receive, please send to us. We will also review them as part of the process of looking at the quality. Often looking at those data collection tools really prove whether the consultant you've hired knows what they're doing. And if they do not send you the data collection tools, I would be worried. Because a professional, qualified evaluator will already have many formats already ready. They will know how to do a focus group and have a focus group guide. They will know how to ask interview questions. The tools don't need to be very long. In fact, we would not want to see 10-page interview questions because your stakeholders are very busy people. So, for example, they just need to send in a one-page interview guide, a set of questions that they will ask, and critically the protocols for gaining consent, protocols for if they're speaking to children, will they need to get the permission of the parents? So yes, absolutely, they need to send the data collection tools, but it may take them a few months to develop those. So if you don't have them in the first month, they can come later and you can send them to me for some advice as and when you receive them. I hope that helps, Crispin.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, oh, Anna needs to go. Oh, are you still there, Anna? I think you left. Yes, okay, so Anna has to go. Okay, and any more questions? I think we've come to the end of the questions in the chat box. Sujita, you have another question. I'll just read it aloud. Do you have any recommendations whether to hire independent consultants or a consulting firm? Depends on how much money you have. Also it depends on your procedures for hiring people. I know in the UN, we often, if we hire a firm, it gets a lot more complicated in terms of verifying references. You have less control if you hire a firm in some ways, because if you hire a firm, you're trusting that that firm will do all the checks of the CV, the checks of the qualifications, the checks of the experience. If you hire an independent consultant, an individual consultant, and their assistants, you can personally check their CVs and their information. But all of this you can always open your advertisement to both. So when you advertise for a consultant, you can say that you welcome proposals from both independent consultants and consulting firms, and that either will have to submit to you a proposal and they should submit to you a CV for those people. So I have no strong recommendation either way, but in either case, you need to see the CVs of those who will be involved in the evaluation. The benefit, obviously, of hiring a firm, if you have more money, is that they will probably organize travel, they will do a lot of the logistics, and it takes that burden off you. Okay. Any other questions? Looks like everyone's going a little bit quiet now, and we are near the end of the session. If Mildred or anyone from the Trust Fund wants to add anything or say hi, please feel free to do so. I took you off mute.
I just thank you everyone who joined from the ECA and LAC region, and thank you, Gemma. It was really helpful as always.
Wonderful. So I will follow up this session by sending you the guidelines later today. Then I would like you to just read them and let me know if you have further questions. And I'm also able, if you want, we can do additional training sessions. So, for example, if you feel that you would like a session on how to write a terms of reference that's a little bit more detailed, feel free to ask me. And then again, when it comes to inception, perhaps we could have another session on what to look out for in your inception. Also, Gigi asked, when should the inception report reach you? Well, that really depends. The inception report depends on when you hire the consultant. So I can't give you a specific. What you will do in the terms of reference is set out a timeline. So when you submit the terms of reference to me, I can make a note of when you expect the inception report. Usually, the inception report should come a few weeks after you hire the consultant. So we can agree that at a later stage. But obviously, given that the evaluation needs to be done 2 months after the project, you need the inception report to be on your table by November this year if your project's ending in December. They need to really have a good 3 months between the inception and the final report to carry out the data collection. But the exact timeline will be decided once you hire the evaluator. Unfortunately, often these things get delayed if it takes time to hire the evaluator. So that's the first step. Okay. Great. Thank you everyone for joining, and I hope to speak to you all again soon through the process. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Bye.